Welcome, everyone. I'm Rebecca Moore, Director of Google Earth and the Google Earth Outreach Team. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's virtual gathering, exploring innovative ways that leading organizations and new technology and data sources are coming together to unlock greater city ambition in tackling the climate crisis and to create a more sustainable and a just future. At Google, we've been committed to environmental sustainability since our founding. And within our GEO organization, sometimes lovingly known as GEO for Good, for more than a decade, we've been focused on developing and sharing geospatial-powered tools, technology, and data with partners to address global environmental issues with locally actionable data in order to drive real-world outcomes. Projects you may know, such as Global Forest Watch, Global Fishing Watch, and the Environmental Insights Explorer for cities. Today, we're going to focus on a subject near and dear to many people, trees, and specifically urban forests, which are increasingly seen as a nature-based climate solution, bringing many benefits, such as lowering street level temperatures and improving quality of life. Even during the pandemic, we're seeing some interesting silver linings. People rediscovering the benefit of being among green trees and gardens during shelter in place. People enjoying local parks and outdoor spaces in record numbers. This connection to nature can translate, we hope, to a greater desire to protect nature, to create healthier communities on the ground, and to restore our planet. In today's discussion, we're super excited to be joined by two people who are at the forefront of urban forestry, who are blazing a new trail. First, we have Rachel Malarich, who is City Forest Officer for the City of Los Angeles. Rachel has over 13 years of experience in Southern California urban forestry with a focus on environmental justice, urban forest management, strategic planning, and community engagement. Welcome, Rachel. We're also joined by Miranda Hutten, Urban and Community Forestry Program Manager in the U.S. Forest Service. Working across California, Hawaii, and the Pacific affiliated islands, Miranda offers technical expertise to manage the health of trees and forests in our communities where we live, work, and play. Miranda also oversees grants and agreements with states, cities, communities, and nonprofit organizations to promote community-driven green space investment. Wanted to really highlight that today's event was designed to bring forward opportunities for us to chat with those of you who are tuning in remotely. We encourage you to share any questions you all may have. You can do this throughout the discussion. Any questions you may have for our wonderful guests by simply clicking the button below to ask a question, and we'll be taking them live as they come in. Okay, let's get started. We'll start with Miranda. Can you tell us what trends in urban forestry you are seeing at the national level?
You know, Rebecca, whether you're following the headlines about how people are reconnecting with their local green space due to COVID, or you're part of the larger dialogue of city planning and green space infrastructure, I really think urban forestry and the groups that are engaged in it and its management have been making national headlines. And a lot of that tension has been positive towards solution-oriented types of problems, focusing in on how we can quantify benefits accrued from trees and services and benefits on how those benefits can tackle really complex and difficult problems facing cities across the nation, like climate change, public health, and environmental justice. Let me dig a little deeper into those. We have a growing knowledge about how trees pay us back, quantifying services that an individual tree or an urban forest can provide us. The Forest Service leads in this type of research. We have a free, peer-reviewed, interactive model called iTree. And simply put, with iTree, if you give me a species, its location, I can estimate how much it'll improve the air quality. For example, how much particulate matter will stick to its leaves, how it'll improve water quality, what type of pollutants will it pull into its roots, and how much carbon it will hold in its trunk. States like California are taking that information straight to the bank. the carbon and cap and trade bank, that is. And they're using it to pay not only for putting in new trees, but maintenance around those trees. We're also seeing at a national level a lot of investment in how to make climate resilient forests. There's a lot of different directions I can go with that. But one of the big questions we're asking is, what trees should we be planting now for the climate we're going to have 20 years from now? For example, in LA, we know it's going to be hotter. We know it's going to be drier. And we really want a resilient canopy that is as good now and improved into the future. So we're looking at different species that can help better adapt to that drought, those temperatures, and the new pests and diseases that might be introduced due to a changing climate. In my home state of California, as well as other states across the country, we're seeing also a growing trend to look at urban forestry through the lens of public health and, of course, equity. If trees can improve our air, how do we plant trees to reduce asthma rates in our community? If we know an oak can reduce ambient temperatures around it by 7 degrees, where do we plant that oak so we can reduce extreme heat days and hospitalizations from heat stroke? A lot of these types of public health issues are tied to equity. So how we tie it to equity is that a lot of the areas that are disproportionately affected by these environmental and health risks have been historically redlined. Goods and services have not been prioritized for those communities. And so it's really an important part of what Rachel, the other speaker on this, is doing, is taking that tree canopy cover and putting it over other redlining and information to make sure that we're prioritizing canopy cover growing in those areas that trees can help with those environmental burdens.
It's fascinating. I just learned a ton from everything you just said, and it strikes me that we're cutting across research, civil society, city government, and what's interesting about that is our audience today turns out to be kind of made up of those three groups. So there's something here for everyone. So just a follow-up question, Miranda, because of course, coming from Google, I'm wondering if you see technical challenges or opportunities that can accelerate progress in the field of urban forestry. Where is the greatest technical expertise needed today across cities to help manage the health of trees and forests in our communities?
I could go on all day on this question, but I'm going to focus it in on two things, because I really think tech expertise is needed to help cities, to help them better understand the health and where their existing urban forest is, and also to help inform future decision making and planning so we can better maximize the benefits we get from trees. Bar none, the greatest technical challenge I think city foresters face is knowing where your existing trees are and identifying what condition they're in, their health. And normally how we do this is we have expensive tree inventories where individuals go out and stand in front of individual trees and log in information, or cities have to purchase satellite data and then use programs like ArcGIS to classify that green space out of the satellite imagery. Both of these types of processes are time consuming, prohibitively expensive for many cities, and it's only just a snapshot in time. Mm-hmm. I really think we ought to be thinking about how we can create a Fitbit for trees. Think about it. Tech companies are in the unique position that they have tons of data, photos, street views of these trees out there, as well as they have the skill set to use AI to analyze those photos and look at them for health and identification. That would help us not only try to figure out where the trees are, but inform us in real time which ones might need a little TLC sooner rather than later. I think there's already some pilot projects underway. I've heard about one in Honolulu trying to understand the health of different palms in relation to agroforestry, and also some work on streets in Pasadena. But I really think this is an area we could grow and develop a great partnership. I will also say that communities are challenged to pick the right tree to maximize benefits that they care about. If we can't get a community to plant trees, it means they won't be maintained. If we can't get them to get behind planting a tree, it means they won't be maintained and we can't accrue those benefits. As I mentioned, we have this platform called iTree that tells us the multitude of benefits that a tree can provide. If you plant a red bud in your front yard, it can answer questions about how much carbon it's going to sequester. But I would ask us to say, how do we take that information and answer some real problems, goals that cities have? Cities across the US have questions like, how do we reduce our carbon footprint? How do we improve air quality? If we could somehow plan what trees to be put in a certain place to meet those goals and track those metrics, that would be such a game changer in us being able to be accountable, transparent, and also effective in the work that we're all trying to do.
Thank you so much, Miranda. So now let's turn to a city at the forefront of urban forestry and to an urban forester. Rachel, you have a job that in my next life I would like to have, being urban forestry officer for a major city. So as LA's city forester, what would you add to this in terms of your near-term goals for LA? Maybe speak to specific examples where technology is helping you advance your work. What's top of mind?
Yes, thank you so much, Rebecca, and to the Google team for having me this morning. And I have to say thank you to the U.S. Forest Service, because Miranda and the Forest Service has been a huge supporter of Los Angeles in getting tools like the type of LiDAR data that she mentioned. We had a LiDAR study that was published in 2018 and really helped us bridge that gap from the last canopy assessment that we had in 2008. And so such an important partner for us. I'm so glad to be on with you, Miranda. So for me, again, Miranda hit a bunch of the really important points, and that real through line, which is we want to have maximize benefits from this public resource, from the trees that we plant in our communities. We want to have the maximum benefit possible. We want to have healthy, long-lived trees, and we want to be looking at the right tree, right place, and then this added component of right reason. What is the reason for trees in that space? Is it heat mitigation? Is it air quality improvement? Is it mental and physical health benefits, or all of those? We know that trees are superheroes and do all of those things, but we know that certain trees might be able to provide us more benefits in some areas than others, and that's some of my work. We're very fortunate right now with Mayor Garcetti and his vision and leadership in the development of the Green New Deal. He identified this issue of tree canopy inequity that, again, Miranda spoke to, where we have communities that have less access to trees and green space and the resources and benefits those trees provide. And he has set an ambitious target for us to increase tree canopy by 50% by 2028 in those areas of greatest need. And that is no easy task. We're looking at issues of available space. We're looking at community feelings and attitudes towards trees. But we're really thankful to have Google, who came on. My first meeting with Google was probably my first week on the job in this role. I had a chance to meet with a team in person pre-COVID and start to talk about how we might be able to use data. And I actually want to do a little demo from the Tree Canopy Lab for you all right now. So we'll bring that up. So here's Los Angeles, and you've got tree canopy cover. You see that we have, I'll note that right here, this green swath is the Santa Monica Mountains. And over here, we also have, Verdugo and San Gabriel Mountains. So a lot of our communities are below that 15%. And so when I think about tree planting in next fall, I might be thinking about, I'll just share that we're also doing our first tree inventory since the 1990s. So again, that traditional inventory where we go and look at the tree, the condition, those kinds of things, including vacancies. And that's going to be critical for what I'm about to share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to select this option to draw a polygon. I'm going to zoom in, and the different boxes you see are actually our neighborhood council areas, which is one of we have council districts, neighborhood councils. There are many different ways to split up the city of Los Angeles. But I'm going to draw a polygon over this one right here, where our tree inventory has told us that there is quite a few large tree vacancies. So street locations where we have room that are 8 to 10 foot wide parkways, which is uncommon. A lot of the areas that have low tree canopy cover also don't have a lot of available space for trees. And that's another problem that I'm having to tackle, but that's a separate one, thinking about infrastructure change. So here you can see that canopy average. That's why I drew the polygon, is to show you that the current canopy average in this neighborhood in South Los Angeles is just over 4%. And so we know we have a lot of work to do to meet the mayor's goal. And then beyond that, you know, if we look at somewhere between 6 and 7% as hitting that mayor's target, we still may need to do much more work in this area to achieve some of the benefits that we want for communities. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I'm going to be talking with our team this summer when we think about planting for next fall. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit further. And we're going to go ahead and say, okay, within this part of this polygon that looks a little bit like a boot, I actually want to see what that heat health action index, and this is a tool to help us look at vulnerability to heat that was developed, a metric system that was developed by the state of California. I'm going to go ahead and just say I care about areas that are above the 50 percentile. And I know this area has low tree canopy cover in general, and the land use component is actually really helpful because these, in my mind, represent different audiences. Anyone who's done tree planting, I know we have some folks hopefully from groups that have done tree planting. Planting on a commercial corridor is very different than planting in open space or single family homes. It requires different messaging, you have a different audience. So I'm gonna go ahead and toggle this just down to the single family homes. And within the land type, the land cover type, I'm gonna go ahead and just get us down to bare soil and grass. And we're gonna start to see an image that starts to hone in on where those opportunities to talk to maybe single family homeowners that may have available space for trees might be. And this would be a good starting point because again, if you've worked in urban forestry, you know that trees are one of the more controversial pieces of infrastructure. I have yet to meet someone that has a strong feeling about the street light or their fire hydrant, but their tree species, there's feelings around trees, whether that be positive or negative. And so we might go to this neighborhood council area and start to meet with community groups and talk about, and again, there's multiple things that we could show them here, but we could start talking about the impact, you know, the lack of tree canopy cover, where potential spaces may be, and what those opportunities might be. Or if we get to the neighborhood council group and they say, you know what, we actually want to focus on the commercial corridors where, you know, it's the gateways to our community, it's where you have a lot of people walking and visiting local businesses, we might start saying, okay, let's look at what's possible here on Western Avenue. So I think we're good on the demo for the moment, so we can stop that. But this is just to kind of give an example of how this tool, one, could be used by us in terms of starting to take the 500 square miles, we're nearly 500 square miles, and start to hone in on some areas where we need trees, or to be able to have a conversation with the community that says, hey, we know that we have less tree cover, we're actually interested in helping see more trees come to our community, and starting to have a dialogue about, again, the different actors, decision making that we might need to make. The one other point I want to highlight is we need data sooner. If we're going to hit some of these targets during this decade of climate action and really moving quickly to increase tree canopy in areas, we need to be getting feedback on how we're doing. You know, previously, again, we had a canopy assessment that was published in 2008 that was part of the reason that I actually ended up starting to work in urban forestry. Was this real disparity between communities was highlighted for groups in Los Angeles, and they said we want to do more about tree canopy and equity. And then in 2018, again, we have this LiDAR study that was really revolutionary in giving us information. But the 2018 LiDAR data was from 2016. And so there's even a delay there in giving us that feedback. And so I don't want to be implementing programs and policies and hoping, you know, crossing my fingers, I hope we get there. I want to be able to say, are we reaching the goals that we hope to reach, or do we need to pivot and be, bureaucracy and nimble don't really typically go together as two words, but that's where we want to move to. We want to be more adaptive in our management of our urban forest. And I'll just add one other piece is University of Southern California, a team led by Dr. Sujin Lee did a study over a 10-year period and saw that tree canopy in Los Angeles and the cities around in LA County all but one city had a decrease in canopy cover due to increased home sizes and some other factors. And that was during a time where we were planting pretty aggressively. And that brings me to the point, another point that I'm really emphasizing for our work here in LA is investment in the 4 pillars of urban forest management: planting, maintenance, preservation, and engagement. You cannot just plant, because if people are removing existing mature trees without a thoughtful process of what the impact on the community will be, if we're not maintaining those trees well, and if we're not engaging the various stakeholders that either have, again, feelings about new trees or feelings about existing trees, and co-creating our public spaces, we're not going to meet our goals. We're just not. So those are the areas where we need to be investing, and tools like the Tree Lab. Again, you all are gathering data and images as a part of your regular work, and then being able to tie that to the AI to be able to give us more easily accessible feedback is tremendous. And it's one of the reasons I've been really so excited about this partnership. It allows me to have data to make arguments for different changes to the status quo going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rachel. I will say we love the partnership with you in the city of LA and this opportunity to transform some of the data that we've collected for other purposes, for Google Maps and so on, and transform it into kind of environmental insights that can really helpfully inform what you guys are doing. So thank you so much. So one last question for Miranda, because I think people are interested probably in the grants and the funding aspect. So in your work involved with granting and funding, where do you think data can help promote community-driven green space investment?
You know, there's a lot of ways I could tackle this question, but I'm just going to pivot just a little bit, because I want to talk a little bit about the lack of data we have about engagement and how people use our parks, our open spaces, and our urban forests. We just don't really know who's coming, oftentimes, and how they're using it. What are they doing there? How far did they travel to go? And what did they do? How far did they travel? How did they travel to get there? By car, by foot, by public transportation? If they went on a walk in one of these public spaces, was it crowded or was it really underused? Right now, the only way I can get at that data is indirectly by setting up a bunch of folks at the entrances of all parks and ticking it off and asking them why they came and asking those questions, or indirectly, maybe through some permitting. For investment in green space and community-driven green space investment, that kind of data, pure gold. It's a way to show there's a need to expand the green space by demonstrating it's overcrowded and being used, or invest in different infrastructure. Maybe more people want picnic tables versus hiking trails. It also addresses the question of access. If people are traveling really far to get to green spaces, then we need to start thinking about bringing them closer to home and creating a neighborhoods as opposed to a big park that nobody can access. I think community groups would salivate, honestly, at that kind of macro level data, and to be able to interpret it with other information like budgets and also work in future activities. And I also think that it would really go a long ways to helping with our equity goals that I mentioned a little bit earlier, as well as prioritizing accessibility. And if we, as Rachel said, if people don't feel that they're a part of the solution and connecting with land, then we're not going to see this priority of maintaining and growing our tree canopy cover and not maximizing those benefits.
Super. Thank you. Thank you both. We do have a few minutes left, and we do have some questions coming in from the audience. So I want to turn to those. Just for those who may have tuned in late, we are taking live questions in the chat panel that you can see on your screen. So here is a first question. This could be either for Miranda or Rachel or both. Are there emerging big data or satellite-derived solutions to understand something about existing tree diversity so that as you're making decisions about the right tree, you can get further refined? So in other words, it sounds like this question is about really identifying tree species from space or from aerial imagery.
I think that Miranda just put this on the wish list in her earlier response, that the tree species and their condition are two areas where we could use some big data support. And I'll just add that tree diversity, obviously that's why I'm really excited that he's doing its first inventory in so long, because it's giving us some additional data sets, which again is only a snapshot in time, but we're looking at that, and tree diversity is just one of the points of equations about right tree, right place. You need to understand the diversity and make sure that you're optimizing for urban forest best practices, and as well as, again, achieving some of the reasons for trees, which in Los Angeles is in part habitat and some biodiversity goals.
And if I just may add to that, I know there is some research out there that's tying together digital elevation models with existing LiDAR to try to detect trees and their canopy and their species based on the height and size of canopy and that work, at least on the U.S. Forest Service land. And some of those pieces of information might also apply to an urban setting. I think there's a lot of really great pilot and information programs out there, but again, it's kind of taking that data and making it bigger than that one street or park that will have the power to be really a game changer for cities.
So this is really helpful for us to hear as Google and I'm sure other technology providers who are trying to figure out how they can be helpful to cities in an urban forestry context. And I will say that the amount of data and the kinds of data and the quality and timeliness and accuracy and the resolution of data that is relevant here is getting better and better and better all the time. New satellites being launched and so on. And, with the technology of, geospatial analytics, cloud computing, and AI, there is more and more potential to do this holy grail that you guys are looking for in terms of identifying actually precise tree species. And we actually are working on that, right now in collaboration with cities because it does seem to be quite important. Okay, next question from Miranda. Can I use iTree basically outside the US, or the question is specifically in India?
Yeah, great question. So iTree started out in the US as a tool, but it's since grown in size due to the need that the questions we're asking everywhere. People are asking it if they're living in urban cities or towns or communities. And so yes, it is available for international audiences. The iTree team actually will work with countries to help upload their species list into the database and use models as well as your local weather patterns and climate conditions to estimate all of those services. So I actually work quite a bit with it out in the Pacific Islands. So totally different species list than say in LA, and the information is tailored to that community and that country.
Okay. Maybe one last question, Rachel, for you. Given that cities are operating in a budget-constrained environment, how do you use data to prioritize funding and deciding where to invest?
Yeah, part of me wishes that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Part of me wishes one of our Streets LA staff members were here to answer this, because this is something else that they've been working on very extensively as they manage our roadways and our street trees. And they've been looking at different ways to deploy cool neighborhood solutions, where we're looking at multiple factors for cooling, including urban forestry and trees. I think, again, it comes back to that blend of taking the data on where the need is, where the opportunities are, how we can overlap other programs within the city, which again, our Streets LA team, their advanced planning is looking at how we do that with multiple assets. But we're also going to then be looking at, which community is ready for this resource. So that's within urban forestry, you have to have a group saying, yes, we're interested in trees being part of the solution here, and we want to see that happen now. And so the data helps us, and then it helps us talk to the communities about the types of interventions that we want to make and that are possible with the existing space available in their communities.
Super. Thank you so much. And I feel like we could go on for a much longer time, but we are at time. I'm glad the demo gods were in our favor. You were able to give such a good demo, Rachel. Thank you so much both to Miranda and Rachel for sharing so many hard-won insights, valuable insights with us today. So we would love to keep the conversation going. Any questions or comments that we weren't able to get to today, feel free to post them here in the chat, and we will work on following up with answers in our follow-up email that will be coming shortly. There will also be a recording. This will be posted on our Google Earth Outreach site. And lastly, I wanted to highlight, LA was the first city pioneering with the EIE Tree Canopy Lab, but we are actively looking to engage with additional cities, leading organizations that are interested in piloting tree canopy data and insights, as you saw here today within the Environmental Insights Explorer. So if you are interested in participating, please submit your interest in the form that should be seen here in the chat box. And so with that, thank you everyone for joining us to discuss a topic that is near and dear to all of our hearts. So please stay healthy, have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much.